Hi guys, welcome back to my channel for another video if you are returning. Today we're going to be talking about how to heal. You guys hear me talking about it all the time. I get a lot of questions from you guys about what has helped me most throughout my own personal journey, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I just wanted to dive deeper and yeah, let's get into the video. The first thing that I'm going to say is that you have to be willing to go through the pain. You just have to accept the fact that you're gonna be in the gutter for a while, which is a completely natural part of the process. I think there's a huge misconception about what healing really is and attaining that dream life. It's not pretty. Like, admittedly, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of patience, and a lot of people sometimes say, oh, but it can come quickly, it can come quickly. But like I said before, really good things in life take a lot of time for a reason because you're building a certain foundation. Now, I talked about this before, so I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but let's start with that acceptance factor, which is that you have to accept that you're just not going to feel entirely okay, at least not in the beginning. You're not going to feel the greatest. You're not going to be all la-di-da. You're going to have to go through the pain. You're going to have to experience being in the mud for a while, being dragged through mud by life itself, and that is a completely natural part of the journey. So I want you to stop feeling like if you're experiencing sadness or anger that is a signal or that is an indication that you are failing, because a lot of the times when we do feel those emotions that operate on a little bit of a lower frequency, we assume that we're failing in some way because we're not supposed to be feeling those emotions, or those emotions are supposedly unnatural somehow, which they are completely not. I'm here to tell you that they are normal, which basically leads me to my next point about pain coming first and then the wisdom. This is something that I had to learn on my personal journey many times, over and over again, because for me, since I always had something in my pocket, something that was like I was ready to do anything to make myself feel better. I was ready to dive deeper into the books that I was reading and all these things. But the problem is I literally live by this, and I feel like I preach this so much because I feel like it's very important, which is that there has to be a period in your life that is purely to just sit in the discomfort of the pain, even if it hurts and even if it feels really terrible and it feels awful. But you have to sit in the dark for a while. And a side note, I want to say that I'm not here to be a false positivity person or fake positivity person. I'm here to tell you guys the truth about what I went through on my journey and what you're probably going to have to experience as well. It's not smooth, and it's especially not linear, so you would just have to kind of gradually start to accept that. But then one thing I will say is that if you stick to it, you will be greatly rewarded. It's pain first and then it's wisdom. Of course, both things can coexist. You can move through your pain with wisdom, which I think is a beautiful way to do it, but it doesn't change the fact that you have to feel it. I also want to note that although you are in a very confusing, maybe a confusing and very lost period of your life where you don't feel like many things make sense, I do want to make note of the fact that you should be careful with the way that you speak to yourself. Now let's discuss this further. I used to laugh at this idea. I never used to believe it until it became apparent in my own life, which is the way that you speak to yourself. You're literally casting a spell on yourself, and you cast spells on other people too by the way that you speak to them. I think it's very important to be gentle with other people, and I understand that in a state of anger, in a state of deep sadness, you can't conjure those emotions of love, even that if that's what you really feel. But at the same time, especially when you're speaking to yourself, especially with the way that you speak to yourself, you need to acknowledge that you might be casting spells on yourself that is taking you further into the gutter than where you actually need to go. Like, you don't need to go that deep, but you're going deeper than that because you are not acknowledging the way that you're speaking to yourself, and I think it can be very harmful. It takes us so far away from our manifestations. It takes us so far away from who we actually want to be because we have no faith in ourselves. So I think that's my biggest thing with this is, like, you cannot put that doubt onto yourself and expect to get the most amazing results. I was speaking about this with my cousin the other day actually, and she's currently reading The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, and she was mentioning that there was a part in the book where he was describing that your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not real. What you say to it, it will believe. So you have to be very careful, especially during this period of healing, because you need to be hyping yourself up to the max. You need to be telling yourself it is going to get better, because it will. It will. That's the thing I need to tell you, and that's the thing you need to understand is, like, it's not going to be like this forever. It's not going to feel so difficult, and I'm speaking from experience because it had been so difficult for me for such a long time that now the dust has really settled for me. I can see things with so much clarity, but it took me so long to get here because I had to understand certain things, and I'm trying to help you guys fast track, you know? But I don't think there's a fast tracking. Like realistically, I don't think there's any way you can really fast track this journey. Let me just say that. Like you have to kind of go through it at your own pace. But I think the best piece of advice that someone had ever given me when it pertains to this is to take it day by day. Taking it day by day means being very patient with yourself and obviously not putting so much pressure on yourself to get things done right away or immediately feel something different because it's not true to you. So on the note of, you know, speaking to yourself more kindly, I think that's where silence is so beautiful, which is my next point about, you know, being in a state where you feel that you don't have much to say is the best state to be in. I think when I don't feel obligated to say so many things, I think that's when I'm my most happiest, if I'm being completely honest. And I think a lot of my really close friends know this about me too, is just like when I don't feel like I constantly am overstimulated. And you know, when I'm overstimulated, it's a different story. I have a lot to say, right? But when I'm in a state of complete peace and groundedness, there's not, like, you'll find that there's not much to say because you're just observing, you're witnessing, rather than constantly trying to interpret things and just, you know, what the mind does, just going off on a whole chatter and then taking you so far away from the present moment that you never realize what's happening now. And I kind of touched on this before in the past as well, as like, you know, keeping a private life and all these things. And I think all of this kind of has to do with that, which is like, there's not much to be said. When you live out your life, eventually you realize there's actually not much to be said. You don't need to tell everybody everything. You don't need to go over so many things with yourself. You know what to do. You know what direction you're headed in. You know, right? You're not saying it, but you know. It's unnecessary for you to constantly run things through, even with other people. A little bit of me right now, if I'm being completely transparent, like I feel like I haven't fully figured out certain things in my life, but I'm on my way. I'm well on my way. Believe me. Believe me. Now let's talk about reparenting your inner child. I feel like when it comes to healing, inevitably you're always going to have to trace everything back to your past, because that's, I think, where everything started to begin with. Obviously the way that you were raised, the way that you were treated, the way you interpreted the world, all comes down to the experiences that you had as a child. I know it might be an annoying thing to hear, but it is true, it is accurate. And so one of the ways I've learned to get more in touch with my inner child, for me personally, was doing shadow work. So if you're not familiar with what this is, it's essentially just asking yourself the kind of more difficult and uncomfortable questions that you wouldn't normally think about, because it's constantly usually being repressed. You know, like reading books and listening to podcasts that kind of resonate with your traumas really allows you to see them in a new light, or to understand them in a new light. I understand why people wouldn't want to open certain wounds. Of course, it's a dreadful thing to do. The only way out is through, my love. The only way out is through. And that's what I always try to keep in mind on my own journey. I was like, okay, this sucks, this feels uncomfortable, but the only way out is through. The only way that I'm gonna ever be able to understand myself fully is if I do the things that I don't want to do, the most uncomfortable things, and best believe it's worked. So that's my piece of advice for you guys. I want you guys to ask yourself, during this period of your life, do I need more self-compassion, or do I need more tough love from myself? Obviously, I think both are very important, but I think that when it pertains to a certain situation, usually one dominates the other. You kind of just like need to ask yourself, do I need more of like, okay, stop making excuses, don't be lazy, like, you know, you have to do this, get it done? Like, do you need that type of, you know, dialogue, or do you need more of like a, okay, slow down, like you're putting too much pressure on yourself, you're doing this and you're doing that and you're juggling all these things at once, so you need to really slow down. And I think for different aspects of your life, you'll use both of these things differently, but identifying which one of these you need most of in the situation that you're in currently is going to give you a huge sense of direction. Are you going to continue to put things off, or do you need to put things off, you know? So for instance, for me right now, honestly, I need to take a lot of pressure off myself. I feel like I've been putting so much pressure on myself to try and get A, B, and C done, when in reality, I have to deal with a lot of things at once, and I feel like I need more of a break. I need more rest. And so that's what I'm trying to practice in my life right now. But I would not have been able to acknowledge that without asking myself, like, am I being too hard on myself, or do I need to be harder on myself? Last thing I want to say for today before I let you guys go, which is that you will get blessed. Oh my goodness, you will get blessed. I think there's so much doubt that goes into this journey. There's so much doubt you have in yourself. There's so much like, is it gonna happen for me? Is it not? But what you have to realize, whenever I've ever stayed true to myself in a situation when that wasn't the most convenient option, it was more convenient for me to go in a direction that everybody else thought I should go into, or that, you know, was deemed right at the time. If you stay true to your word, you stay true to who you are, like, you will get blessed. I promise you that. Honestly, I think in my personal life, everything's been coming to me a lot more easily now because I have so much more mental clarity on where I need to be, and I'm prioritizing things that I was putting off for a long time. That's it for today's video. I'm sending you guys so much love and light. Thank you guys so much for 1K. That is crazy to me. It blows my mind that it's only been like two or 3 months since I've been on YouTube, and I feel so eternally grateful. So thank you so much for supporting my channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.